Hi there, Eric Hinojos here with First Coast Heroes Navy to Navy Homes. Katie's here, she's my wife, and we are the owners of First Coast Heroes team. And we are excited about today's video. We're gonna talk about the buying process from start to finish. There's 6 big steps that we really wanna harp in on. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So Katie, what's the first step that somebody should take to when they're buying a home?
Well, this may not come as a surprise or may come as a surprise, but I think you really should talk to a real estate agent first.
Why is that?
I think because real estate agents tend to know everybody for everything in the transaction. They're really the place to start as far as not wanting to know what to look for in a home. They have an idea of the pulse of the market more so than anybody else. And then they probably have some good lenders to point you to in the direction.
Yeah, I love that. Now, typically when somebody comes up to us, they're very ready to talk to a lender, but there are lenders out there that are charging some really ridiculous fees, or they may not be local. And so real estate is just really hyper local. There's different rules and regulations with what kind of inspections need to happen. And so one state may differ, and with these big old nationwide lenders, it just may not work out. So
I remember one of our buyers almost got charged a fee because in a different state they would, but in Florida it's a seller expense. So we had to sniff that out. So as you say, that's a really good point.
It's really, so that's why we like starting off with the agent. And there's a lot of agents out there, and I'm sure your friends and family can recommend one if you're in Facebook groups or Instagram pages that you're following. So there's always a way to get a hold of somebody, and maybe just talk to them, see if they're a good fit for you, because we're very specialized in helping VA buyers. And so the person you're choosing may not know much about the VA loan.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of getting into financing, I think that's probably our next step, right? After you do the agent.
Well, you want to know what your budget is. I think it's always very helpful. You don't want to, I think it's good to know that sooner rather than later. It's so fun to go on Zillow and all these really fun websites and try to look and see, what's out there at this price, and then that little thing at the bottom that says estimated monthly payment could be a little misleading. So I actually think it's really smart to talk to the lender first. They can give you a really good glimpse about what the interest rates are going for right now and specific to you and the interest rate you could qualify for and what you're kind of looking at for a monthly payment.
And so while you're keeping that in mind, hey, they're going to tell you how much you can get qualified for, you may want to just say, this is what I actually want to get qualified for, because they may max you out at $450, $500, who knows? But you really only want to keep a monthly payment up to $1,300. So have that conversation. So while you can get approved, you're awesome, you got awesome credit and you can go way up high, you may just want to keep it really low. So have that conversation. That's really good, discussing your financing options. This is kind of the part of the conversation when we have, we're talking to buyers and having that buyer consult, hey, this is what you want to do, looking for your VA loan, but also the money up front. And we typically talk about 3 types of money you should have or be prepared to spend. And so can you tell us a little bit more about that? How much money someone should have saved up before they start the buying process, specifically for a VA loan?
Specifically for a VA loan, so as we know, VA loans are 0 down payment, right? So yay, if you qualify for a VA loan, you don't have to come to the table with a down payment, which is awesome, but you still do have some fees associated with buying a home. You are buying a home after all. So there are closing costs and prepaids that will be taken at closing, and it's a whole bunch of different things. It's prorations, it's title transfer fees, it's recording fees. I mean, it's just a whole slew of things to make the transaction happen, basically. And we estimate about 3% of the purchase price is for your closing costs and prepaid. So that's taken out at closing. But before you even get to the closing table, when you go and put an offer, which we'll probably talk about an offer here in a minute, you have to have this thing called a binder deposit or earnest money. And typically we're looking at about 1% of the purchase price. Depending on the purchase price of the home, we might be able to get away with only $1,000. But that money comes out of your account when you put in an offer within 3 days. So from the point of an accepted offer, your deposit's due within 3 days. And then after that, we have some inspections. You want to get the home inspected, specifically for VA loan funded house. You'll have WDO, which is wood destroying organisms. They check for termites and wood rot. So those 2 inspections cost about $500, depending on who you're going with. And then in a couple weeks after that, you'll have the appraisal fee, which is about $450 to $500 as well. So I mean, a minimum out of pocket is $2,000, but if we're looking at certain price points in the market that we're in, I mean, comfortably a little bit more than that.
Yeah. So just to recap, those have about $2,000 ready to go when you're starting off in the buying process. $1,000 may or may not be enough for the binder deposit. You may need to save up to about 1%. So on $250,000 house, that's $2,500 that you may need to have saved up. And then Katie was talking about the appraisals and then the inspections. So that's another $500 chunk and a $500 chunk. That's about $1,000. So anywhere between $2,000 maybe up to like 25 or $3,000. So
yeah, just to get started. And that's if the seller covers your closing costs. Which in this market, I mean, we have to be real.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that when we get to the offer and how to structure that. But so let's say, so you talk to your agent. That's what we recommend being step number one. You've talked to a lender, got some good financing options. You talked about your VA loan, found out how much you want to get pre-approved for, how much you really want, like what you want to stay up for your budget. You've got your money saved up. So the next part's really kind of the fun part, right?
The fun part, yeah. Shopping.
It's the home search part. And so what we really want to talk about with the home search is that there's a lot of ways to find homes now. The internet is just blown up and it's just super easy to find homes. Easy, right?
Easy if there's inventory, right?
There's inventory, right?
You may feel like there's not much out there. You're looking at the same house over and over again. It's because
there is no inventory
at time of this recording.
Yeah. So there's options like you can do Zillow, you can do Trulia. We use the MLS. MLS it's the multiple listing service. That's where all the homes for sale live that are listed with the agents. There are other websites like For Sale by Owners, Military Home Search by Owner, things like that.
Yeah.
But we
it's
have
like 1%. Like
they're not really.
It's not the bulk of it.
It's not the bulk of the homes.
Yeah. The center of gravity is definitely MLS.
MLS. That's where the power of using a real estate agent is. There's an app out there that's called HomeSnap. HomeSnap is a really cool app. We have our own MLS app. Honestly, it's not very good. So if you're the MLS, sorry, it's just not good. You should update it. But HomeSnap is like a cool overlay over the MLS, and it gives you real-time data.
Yeah.
And so when you're searching online and you're looking at these homes on Zillow, you're like, oh my goodness, this one's available. This one's available. But look over to the right of it. They may say like contingent, take backup, or it just says contingent, or it says pending. Now those homes are technically not really available. And I'll tell you why. Contingent take backup means they've already accepted an offer. They're just waiting on like inspections and financing, maybe appraisals, and they're keeping the house in a contingent status. So they may be open to taking a backup offer, but it doesn't really fall through that often. But if you really love that home, throw in an offer, negotiate a backup, have that ready. I know the listing agent's gonna love that. Pending means that, hey, they've already gone through their inspections. More than likely they've gone through the appraisal. Financing is pretty secure. That one's pretty much close to closing. So unfortunately, that probably won't work out. But always keep your eye on it because it could fall back on the market and you may be able to just swoop in and get it. There are other two statuses on Zillow that I really want to discuss. It's like the pre-foreclosure and foreclosure. Katie, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So pre-foreclosure could be a little bit misleading on Zillow. We get, links from customers all the time saying, hey, like, what's the deal with this house? It's in pre-foreclosure. Does this mean I can get a really good deal on it? And usually there's like a really low price on it too. Really attractive, right? But after we kind of look into it a little bit, 9 times out of 10, that house is really not available. Really what happens is that when an owner of a home misses a few payments, that kind of gets publicly recorded. And so Zillow takes that information, this owner is behind on their payments. This may become a opportunity for foreclosure or pre-foreclosure. So they list it that way. Really, that's just a way to kind of Zillow to generate leads.
That's right, yeah.
So you can definitely forward it to us, forward it to your agent, but just don't get your hopes up about it because it's probably not for sale.
Yeah. Perfect. Foreclosure homes, they typically are for sale. And that's not really hard. With the VA loan, it may be just a tad bit more expensive. Maybe the bank won't cover your closing costs, but it's not that hard. You can close a foreclosed home on like 30 to 45 days.
Mm-hmm.
It means the bank owns it. It's real estate that's foreclosed. Real estate owned by the bank. That's the REO foreclosure.
If you see pictures where there's no flooring,
oh yeah,
or like that's a really good sign because a lot of times these foreclosures they rip up the carpets and rip up the floors so you can see the foundation underneath. If a home, and this is specific to VA and really FHA too, if the home does not meet the minimum property requirements, which would be having floors amongst a whole list of other things, then it wouldn't be eligible. And for the most part, foreclosures aren't going to want to do any repairs. So if the house is, if you're looking at the pictures and we go view it in person, it looks like it's in shape to pass the VA minimum requirements, and it's worth it. But I know I've gotten some homes sent to me with pictures and there's just no flooring. And that's like the first tip off that it's probably not going to be a good fit for VA.
Yeah. Okay, so once we find your home, and then it's like it could have been that first weekend. So on average, most people look anywhere between 8 and 10 homes. Some people find one, like the first home's like, this is it, I gotta have it, because the internet's so good with pictures, location. You can Google Maps it, you can Google Drive it, and so you just really need to do what we like to call the sniff test. You got to come in there and make sure like, hey, the picture's real legit. It doesn't smell like whatever. It smells move-in ready, it's clean. So then it could be your first house, it could be your 10th house, it could be your 20th. It doesn't matter. It's all about you finding the home that fits for you and meets your family's needs. But once we find it, it's ready to structure that offer. And so typically that's why we have you guys pre-approved before we go in and look in homes, because once you find your home, you need to have your pre-approval ready to go to submit with your offer. Couple of things with your offer. That's the time when we're going to be discussing your purchase price, like how much do you really want to offer them. Other points like the binder deposit. Depends on how long the house has been on the market. The house has been on the market for, let's just say 24 hours, 48 hours. You're gonna wanna come in really strong with your offer. You're gonna wanna have a strong binder deposit. Like Katie was saying earlier, 1%. That's saying, hey, I'm committed to this home. I've got finances available. And so you show up as a really strong buyer. You're also gonna discuss closing dates. Typically on average, it takes anywhere between 30 and 45 days. That's a good time to have a conversation with your agent. Have that agent talk to the listing agent. Maybe you can get a little bit more information. Hey, do the sellers need a quick close? Do they need a slow close? If you're flexible and you have a little bit more options, maybe giving the sellers the dealer's choice, like, hey, you pick the closing date, that may make your offer more attractive. You have like things like home warranties, other different closing costs. Are you asking for closing costs? Like Katie discussed earlier, closing costs are about on average 3%. So let's say on a $250,000 house, that's $7,500 that you would need to bring to the closing table. We were seeing back in the past, at the time of this recording, we're just January 2021, market is like at an all-time low with inventory. I mean, there are no homes, so it's just impossible to ask sellers for closing costs. But I'm gonna caveat that if a home has been on the market for like, I don't know, maybe a month, 2 months, maybe the seller's gonna get a little nervous now, like, hey, I gotta sell this house. Maybe me making an investment of that 3% to cover the buyer's closing costs, but me to pull out the rest of my equity, that's a good choice. So maybe that's an option for them. And so that's really kind of the things that we're discussing here with the offer. Just have those conversations with your realtor before you get into the perspective, like, and submit the offer, because you're gonna wanna move fast. And I'm telling you real fast, the house moves on the market, you're gonna wanna be there that weekend, that night, that afternoon, within an hour, because these houses are moving fast. Again, 2021.
even if you are the first offer too, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna win, because a lot of sellers know that they're probably gonna get, if a seller has a house that is move-in ready, it's in good condition, in a good location, at the right price, they probably are going to expect multiple offers. Especially if they have a listing agent representing them, they're going to say, "Hey, let's see what the weekend brings." And
right.
So even if you are first, you may not win, because if they go into multiple offers and a different offer is more appealing than yours, that's something to consider. And also, I just want to also add that the 3% closing costs are just the buyer's closing expenses. The seller has their own set too. That's a misconception sometimes, that the buyer is paying all the closing costs. It's not true. Sellers actually have not only their set of closing costs, but they also pay real estate commissions. So their closing costs are closer to 8 to 9%, whereas a buyer's is closer to 3. So when you're asking that seller to pay for your closing costs, you're asking them to come up to 11, 12% of the purchase price out of their equity. So just keep that in mind. They're not being a villain if they don't want to pay for your closing costs.
That's a good point.
Because they have their own.
That's a really good point. Thank you. So what do we got? We got the offer.
Talking the offer, how to make the offer attractive. Well, there's some free things that you can do to make the offer more attractive.
I love this.
So like Eric said, you can be flexible on the closing date. That's for free. You can write a letter and send a photo. That's for free.
Huge.
Yeah, because remember, it's a person on the other end of that transaction. That seller lived in that home for however many years. It served a purpose for them in their life. I'm sure that they want it to pass on to somebody who will take good care of it too. So if you kind of explain your situation, explain your desire to do in the home, that might help, and that's for free. Can't hurt. And then there's some other little tactics. I don't know if you want to get into some of the tactics as far as like...
You can draft up what they call an escalatory clause. So that's kind of like eBay's bidding, right? Auto bidding. So let's say the house is, you're going to purchase it for $250, but you're like, hey, I'm going to put an escalatory up to $260. So by every, you can do every $500, every $1,000, but I'll beat the highest offer on the table by X amount up to X amount.
Yeah.
So for example, like let's say the purchase price is $250, I'm willing to go up to $260 by $1,000. So if there was an offer for $255, then your offer would come in at $256, and that's sometimes that works.
Yeah, sometimes it works. So that one's not free, but
That one's not free.
you could.
I mean, I've seen some crazy stuff too. Like I've seen buyers willing to pay like maybe 1% of the seller's closing costs.
Yeah, or over appraised value.
Or let's say
Out of
that's the other thing, right? So we're dealing with appraisals, and so if you're wondering why, like, hey, the house is worth $250,000, I offered him $250,000 and didn't ask him for anything, no closing costs, no home warranties. Then why didn't they accept my offer? Well, maybe an offer came in at $260 or $255, but what we don't know behind the scenes, because we can't get disclosed what the offer was that beat us. But maybe that person that offered $260 said, hey, listing agent, I know that maybe it won't praise at $260, maybe it's gonna praise at $255. Don't know what it is, but I'm gonna be willing, my buyers are willing to pay the difference in appraised value with cash. So wow.
Yeah,
Doesn't that look
that's
appetizing?
appealing, yeah.
But that's not free.
No, it's not free either. Yeah. So there's different things, and you can
Yeah.
talk to your agent about how to make your offer, because it's so specific to the home and the situation as well.
Yeah. So, and it's always good to throw in a letter. It just personalizes, and especially in a multiple offer situation, you stand out, because right now there's just names and numbers. But if I got 5 offers and there's a story behind one of those offers, they got pictures of their family and they're telling me why they love my home, you know what? I may pick that one.
Yeah.
Has that
And
happened
they
before?
resonate, yeah.
It happens all the time, guys.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens, I mean, it just happened recently with us. You had a family, they won over another offer that had a higher price, but the story was so compelling,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so always keep that in mind. Okay, so your offer was accepted.
Yay!
We're under contract. This is super exciting, you know, because at that point, until your offer is accepted, the house is not yours. So don't go falling in love with it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
these are like offers executed, but once that happens, then we get into the escrow period, and it's just fast and furious. A ton of stuff's happening. If you remember from earlier, we were talking about the inspections and the appraisal and having that money up front and available. Well, this is where that comes into play. And this is specific for us here in Northeast Florida, and we're talking VA loans, specific stuff. So if this doesn't match up with the area that you're in, the city you're in, the state, it's because we're talking Northeast Florida. But once we go under contract, we have 3 days to submit that binder deposit. That was negotiated either, you know, that $1,000 or that 1%, doesn't matter. It'll go towards the title company. The buyer submits the binder deposit. It doesn't go to the seller. The seller doesn't put it in their pocket and say, I'll hold on to this for you. No, it goes to this title company. The title company is essentially the referee. They're making sure everything goes smoothly with the transaction. They're a lawyer. And so they're going to hold on to it. In the event that the buyer defaults on the protections in the contract, that binder deposit goes to the seller. But let's say that everything goes smoothly, which we pray and hope it does, then that binder deposit comes back to you. You can either apply it towards your closing costs, or if all your closing costs are covered, then it'll just come back to you in your pocket. So that's good news. So that's within the first 3 days, your binder deposit. What's due next?
So after your binder deposit, now we're going to be scheduling inspections, and also you'll be officially submitting and choosing the lender that you want to work with. So typically again, specific to Northeast Florida, you've got about 5 days to make application with a lender, which means that you really should choose the one that you want to go with and officially get that rolling, give them the contract, and so that they can get that going. After that, you have inspections. So we'll give you a couple, your real estate agent should give you a couple suggestions, but you are also welcome to hire anybody that you want to do any inspection that you want. You have 10 days of due diligence to have someone go in there. They can check for mold if they want to.
Sure.
We recommend just like the basic home inspection where they kind of come in and they hop up on the roof or get a camera on the roof. They check outlets, they check all the faucets, anything running water, check for safety issues and things like that. VA loan, the only inspection you have to have is a WDO inspection, which is wood destroying organisms, and that's where they check for wood rot or termites or those
Powder post beetles.
Yeah, powder post beetles. So you'll get your inspection back to you, the report, and then you kind of go over it. Do you still want to buy the house? But you have that 10 days to take a look, make sure, do whatever research you want on the school district or, any research that you want, that you have those 10 days for. And if for some reason you do not want to proceed with the contract, you can pull out of the contract and retain your binder.
I'm going to add something else for the inspections, because we are talking VA loan. If you're buying a house on well water or septic tank, Interestingly enough, you don't have to have the septic tank inspected. 100% recommended. They run anywhere between $500 and $600. They'll pump out the tank. They'll look at the baffles, make sure everything's running correctly. The pumps, the drain field. They'll check all that stuff out. 100% recommended, but not required by the VA loan. But water testing is. They're going to want to test for things like E. coli and different bacteria to make sure it's potable water that you can drink it, and then it's safe for your own home. And we have recommendations for different water sampling people that we used here in Florida, but always feel free to do your own research. But just to recap on the VA loan, it's really interesting. Home inspections are not required. The VA does not come out to your house and inspect it. That's a very common misperception, that the VA is going to come and inspect your home.
That they're hearing this clipboard and like, this is all wrong and you have to fix this. It's not really like that.
No, it's not. It's really not. The only two inspections that are required by the VA loan, and that's because the lender is required to submit that part of the package. It's the water sample and then the WDO, wood destroying organism. So just keep that in mind. But I 100% recommend you get everything inspected. That way, because at the end of the day, $1,000 to get every single thing inspected. If you're doing like septic, water sampling, WDO, and your home inspection, what a cheap investment in money to know that your house is good. Mm-hmm. Because now you've got a negotiating chip. Right, so that's what Katie was saying. Those 10 days, I have all these different inspections saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this house needs to be fixed. This is X, Y, and Z. And that $1,000 may have just turned into like $5,000, $10,000 that the seller may or may not need to fix. But now that it's been discovered, it needs to be disclosed, because now everybody knows the material condition of the home. So if it's a big thing and it's a big issue, that seller may or may not be able to sell that house now if they're not going to fix it. So that's why it's always a good negotiating chip to have those inspections complete. So once we get the inspections done, and you guys are good to go with moving forward, like, oh man, that was nice. The house is great. I'm super excited.
I can do some caulk repairs, no problem.
Easy stuff. Yeah. I mean, some of this, like the market that we're in right now, it's like you're not requesting anything, nothing cosmetic. Typically, you're only requesting things that are safety items, hazardous items, or like big ticket items. But you should already know when you're walking through the home, like, man, obviously I need some paint here, I need paint there, and you're not gonna ask the seller to fix that.
Right. And you'll know going into it, like the age of, say the HVAC. Oh, yeah. Say it's like a 16, 17-year-old HVAC. Don't expect that the seller's going to replace that or fix that for you, because you knew that going into it. I think sometimes I've had buyers think like, oh, this roof is old, they're going to replace it. Like, no, that's not what that's for.
Exactly. So once you guys are good to go, the inspections get negotiated. So I'm just going to talk very specific for here in Northeast Florida, specifically Jacksonville. We have that 10-day period. We submit the repair request. That's how we communicate to the sellers that, hey, this is what we want fixed. Then the sellers have 7 days to get back to us with the response. And then they're probably more than likely going to get quotes. They're going to talk about, like, hey, maybe we'll say we'll do X, Y, and Z, but we're not going to do A, B, and C. So it's another negotiating process. But if you guys can't come to terms between buyer and seller, and like, hey, we're just too far apart, the buyers can walk away, retain their buyer, and the sellers can put the house back on the market. So just understand that you still have options. The buyer is the contract here in Florida, in Jacksonville, it favors the buyer big time once you're under contract. Okay, so once that gets negotiated and then the repairs are good, you guys are feeling great about the house, like, let's keep moving forward. We're gonna tell the lender, hey, we're clear to order the appraisal. Reason we don't do it early is because we don't want you to spend the other extra $450, $500 if you know you're not even gonna buy the house. Yeah. So wait till your inspections are done, then go ahead and order your appraisal. The appraisal is the lender's gonna order the appraisal, VA loan. I'm sure you know this, but I'm just gonna reiterate it. The VA isn't the one lending you the money. It's just a product. It's a product that the lenders can lend out. So the guarantee. So it's not like the seller is ordering the appraisal, the lender is ordering the VA to order the appraisal. It's a whole different process. So the VA, the lender, is gonna order the appraisal to this thing called an AMC, which is the appraisal management company. Those guys are going to then see who's next in line that's qualified to do VA appraisals. The reason that has to happen is because each appraiser has different qualifications, and the VA needs to know that the appraiser that's going in there needs to know what the VA's minimum property requirements are. And that's what Katie was talking about earlier. So it may take a while. It's not like everybody's VA qualified to do that inspection. Now, we did mention earlier that the VA is not inspecting your home, but the appraiser is the one that's kind of doing your inspection to verify that it meets the minimum property requirements. So that's kind of how that works out. It could take anywhere between 1 week, 3 weeks, but just be patient with the process. That's gonna be like the longest hurdle, getting the appraisal complete. But once the appraisal is done, then they'll send over the report over to the lender. The lender will then look at it, and we're only looking for 2 terms. We're looking for as is and at value, meaning that the appraiser saw that there were no repairs needed to be made, and in order to meet the minimum property requirements, and 2, that it came in at value. Is there anything you want to add on the appraisals? Did I miss anything?
No,
I love talking about all that stuff.
I know, it's so fun. Yeah, the as is at value is
Yeah.
super important, and that's all we need to tell the seller. So, like, say you are under contract for $250,000, but it appraised at $255,000. Like, you don't have to tell the seller that. You just have $5,000 of instant equity. It's not
nice.
that common right now, but it has happened.
It has happened.
So all you need to know is that it appraised at value and as is.
Yeah.
I mean, we could get into if it doesn't, but maybe
But we won't.
save it for
We'll
another video.
save it for
Another video.
And there, if any other questions you guys have, just drop them in the comments below.
Yeah.
We'll hit them up. Okay, so appraisal is complete. Now you're working a lot with your lender, back and forth. They're asking you for all kinds of paperwork, documents, statements.
They're just in your business.
Yeah, they are. 'Cause they're loaning you a lot of money, so
Yeah.
they kind of get that right too.
But it feels intrusive,
It does.
but don't feel like it's only happening to you. It happens to everybody.
Everybody.
They want to know your childcare.
They
I mean,
do.
everything.
Your
Any
plan for
expense you
childcare.
have, your plan for childcare, everything. They want to know your job. They want to know your, they want to know how long you'll be at that job. If it's the trajectory is good. Because we've had people like, hey, I'm getting out of the military in a month and I want to buy a house. It's like, you may not be able to unless you have a job set up for you. So that's actually a very common scenario. I know I've run into it a couple times where somebody's retiring out of the Navy, or they're, just getting out and they want to go to college. Like, oh, I'm going to get that.
GI Bill.
Yeah, like I'm going to use my GI Bill and I'll get like a little stipend through that. You can't buy a house with that. So you need, I think, at least a year of like,
Unless you have like a contract.
unless you have a contract of like, projected out.
out,
So, if you're in the Navy or in the military right now and you're thinking about getting out, yeah.
That happened to us.
Yeah.
We tried.
It did happen to us.
We got out in 2016, and I was like, oh, let's go buy a house when we get to Jacksonville. Like, hey, shit, mate, do you have a job lined up? I'm like, oh, I'm going to go be a realtor. Like, man, that ain't a job.
We need 2 years. We need 2 years tax returns.
Tax returns. You're
Yes,
self-employed.
W-9, yeah. So employment is very important.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, okay.
Don't quit your job
Yeah.
or do anything crazy
Credit.
during escrow, especially.
Oh, yeah. Don't buy cars. Just recently heard a story. Somebody was under contract, 3 days away from closing. They decided to buy a car because they felt really good about themselves. Like, hey, we're going to move to closing. The lender ran the credit the day before. And because, the day before closing, they couldn't buy the house anymore. They bought a car, they couldn't buy the house because their debt to income ratio went through the roof.
Yeah. Yeah,
So just don't buy nothing.
Yeah, just hunker down. You can buy groceries.
Yeah.
Don't take out any new credit accounts. Like we had somebody pull out, oh, I'll put a credit account on Rooms to Go because I want to furnish my new house. It's like, well, that changes your credit score. So
Changes everything.
before you do anything, just talk to your lender and they'll tell you.
Yeah. Okay, so we've gone through escrow. So we're pretty much getting to the end. There's only really one more thing we're left with, and that's the clear to close. So the buyer's loan is approved, and the lender says, hey, everything came out of underwriting. This file is clear to close. Typically receive that about 2 to 3 days prior to closing, but don't get scared or upset if it comes in the night before, because it can happen. I've seen clear to closes happen the morning of, and closing gets pushed back up. It happens. It's really crazy in the market, especially like I was saying, the appraisal needs to be in before they can finalize the whole underwriting package. So,
and you might have gotten through, we've been in escrow for 3.5 weeks, and the underwriter views it. The underwriter is not the person you've been working with this whole time with your lender. The underwriter is somebody else, and they need something, and your lender is the one that gives you that news, like, hey, I need this document, and you're frustrated. You're like, I just already sent that to you. You need it again. I gotta go dig it up. It's like, well, don't shoot the messenger. It's the underwriter who's really asking for it. So
Right.
They may see something that maybe we didn't see or you didn't see or the lender didn't see. They may see something that they need, just the last piece of the puzzle. So just be prepared, toward even the end of escrow to submit documents.
yeah. Okay, so then you get the clear to close, and now we're headed to closing. So there's really just one more step, and that's when we all kind of get back together. We're going to do the final walkthrough. The final walkthrough is not the time to say, hey, we need you to fix X, Y, and Z. It's just to make sure that the home was maintained in the condition that you saw it in, or better, and that anything that was negotiating the contract to stay behind, like the washer and dryer, the fridge, things like that, they stay behind. And make sure there aren't any like holes in the walls, like something like punch that beat it or flooding or something like that. It's the final walkthrough. It's the opportunity to make sure that the house is swept clean and removed, and all the seller's personal belongings have been removed. So that's kind of where that's at. And then you get into closing. And then closing, budget anywhere between an hour and 2 hours for the actual closing process. It could be a little faster, it could be a little slower. It depends on how fast the lender looks at all the documents. But it's really fun. You just have to relax. I know when we bought our first house, we were like,
yeah, like, okay, here we go.
It doesn't feel like when you're buying a car, though. You know, you kind of feel like high pressure sales. You're in this little room, and you're like, oh, what am I signing? What am I signing? All the documents you're gonna be signing.
You already saw them
seen them
electronically.
Yeah, you've already seen them. Maybe you haven't seen the deed.
Yeah, but that's a good thing.
Yeah. But that's it. I mean, that's like, hey, that's the house. Maybe a couple of the title documents, but other than that, all the lender documents, they just require you to have a wet signature. Question, what happens if my spouse is in here and they're deployed?
I was wondering if you wanted to get into this.
I do. Just mine. Why not?
So we were just discussing closing as though all parties who are buying the house are present. But as we know, being, veterans, we know that sometimes a spouse may be forward deployed or not there, or a spouse might be an advanced party, or neither of you can be here at all. So we'll talk about the scenario of a couple, maybe one is here and one is not. Marriage allows you to be a power of attorney. I guess you could assign anybody a power of attorney, but we see this a lot where I may need to sign for Eric. If Eric was gone, I would have to have a power of attorney to sign for him. You have to communicate to us very soon, because not only does that require paperwork, but that power of attorney needs to be drafted by an attorney, and it needs to be approved by both the lender and the title company in order to make it.
And it could be time consuming. Imagine if your spouse is on the ship and they can't get back to you because they're deployed to 6th Fleet, 5th Fleet, and they're in the middle of who knows what's going on, and they got to mail that thing off.
And just because you have like that, general power of attorney from the military, it
may not work.
It doesn't work.
The general, you need the real estate.
You need a real estate. You need to. I know a lot of spouses will have the power of attorney from if their spouse is deployed, but that one is not specific enough. You need a specific power of attorney with the address of the home that you're buying, and there's no way you would know that until you went under contract. So you need to plan for that and like have a notary. And another thing that comes into mind is a legalo on a ship cannot do that for the service member. So I know we're kind of acting and talking as though it's a person who's deployed in active duty, but we've run into it so many times that like, oh yeah, I'll just have my legalo do it. The legalo can't do it.
Yeah,
you need to go like the real cell or an attorney.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad we threw that in there, because a lot of times you'll get to this point, you're like, okay, no big deal, but it is a big deal, the whole power of attorney. It's a whole conversation. That's like, we just wanted to bring it up to your attention, but that's it. So that's closing, guys. So once you get, for us here in Leeland, Northeast Florida, it's very common to close, get your keys, and you walk over to your home. So manage or plan for that. So you get your keys and you go home after you sign.
Yeah.
And everybody's happy. You take a big picture and everyone's like, woo, congratulations.
Yeah, go have like a nice meal and get ready to move and decorate.
Yeah, take all the Motrin you can.
Yeah.
It's gonna hurt. But that's it. That's kind of like the big, really wanted to get in deep with the buying process from start to finish. So just to recap, we always recommend starting with your agent. Your agent's gonna have a lot of local recommendations for lenders, for things that are just hyper local to your market, and then after that you're going to get into financing, discuss what you can be qualified for, but what you really want to be qualified for, and then talk about your VA loan, and we'll do more videos on that. And then the home search, talking about we looked at different apps and how to get in there fast and what different statuses are. So really, the internet's huge, but there's still a limitation. So have your agent work for you. Just communicate specifically what you're looking for, and then it'll work out. And then your offer, your inspections, the escrow period, and closing. Those are all kind of big bunched up, but just be patient with the process. Mm-hmm. It is a process. Maybe
you may not win your first offer.
You may not win your first offer. You know, win your third one, but you'll get there. Just be patient. Sometimes things gotta flex, but we're here to answer any other questions that you guys have. We love making these videos. So you guys have any questions or things that we can cover for you, or even just topics?
We've probably seen it.
We've probably seen it. Just drop a comment, send us a message directly. We'd be happy to help you guys out. Make sure to follow our YouTube page. We're always posting up new content up there. We've got different sections for sellers, different sections for buyers. We sometimes have video sneak peeks. That way you guys can, like, if you're in this competitive market, you're like, oh my gosh, this is the house I want.
Yeah.
But yeah, call this number. We're happy to help. So just call this number right here or email me here and we'll get back to you. Please do. Katie, Eric, we're with First Coast Heroes at Navy to Navy Homes. We are always happy to help. So you're not bothering us.
No,
So.
we're always happy to educate.
Yeah.
You know, so
Even if it's just a quick call, quick text, send it over.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, take care. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.